Hello, hello. Good evening. Sorry, a little technical glitch there. Welcome. If you are joining me on Facebook or on YouTube, hi, my name is Dru Jaeger. I am one of Club Soda's co-founders, and my role in Club Soda, for those of you who haven't met me, is that I look after all of our courses. So if you are interested in changing your drinking, whether you want to cut down or stop for a bit or take a break or quit altogether, we've got courses to support you. So do check out at joinclubsoda.com/courses. You'll find we've got a free course called How to Change Your Drinking, which you can sign up to anytime. And then we've got two longer courses. Which really are a much deeper dive into everything to do with changing your drinking. So whether you want to moderate your drinking, we've got a course called How to Drink Mindfully. That's really ideal if you want to explore and you don't know how you want to change. That's really good for that. And then we've got another course called How to Stop Drinking, which basically does what it says on the tin, takes you through everything that you need to know about how to change your drinking. So every month on a Sunday evening, I jump onto Facebook and YouTube to do what we call Ask Dru Live. I actually write a weekly advice column for Club Soda, which comes out on a Wednesday, so do check that out. It goes out in our email newsletter. But I like to come on once a month and answer your questions about really everything to do with changing your drinking. And so this month, for those of you who are based in England, you will know that pubs reopen tomorrow for outdoor hospitality. In fact, hospitality venues open outdoors. Non-essential retail is opening up. You know, if you're in desperate need of a haircut like I am, you can get, the world is starting to open up again. Things are going a bit more slowly in Scotland and Wales. You've got to wait until the 26th of April until outdoor hospitality returns. And there isn't yet a date set for Northern Ireland. But slowly but surely, as vaccines take effect, as case numbers go down, we are opening up the economy, which is a brilliant thing for all of those people working in the hospitality industry who've been on furlough or haven't been able to work. A fabulous thing for people to be able to get back to work. This is very exciting. But that said, the opening up of hospitality, the reopening of pubs, causes concern, particularly if you've changed your drinking during the pandemic, if you've taken this time to cut down or to stop, and maybe you're very new in that, very early at the beginning, just of changing your drinking, suddenly the pub's reopening. It feels like it might be a really difficult thing for some people. I ran some workshops last month called Drinking in the Pandemic, What's Next? And I got together groups of 12 people and we really dived deeply into this issue of how to consolidate what's worked really well in lockdown, what hasn't worked so well, what you want to build on for the future. So I wanted to bring some of that just to say in that if you've got any comments or questions or anything that you want me to talk about, I've got some notes. I'm going to give you, so I've got 10 top tips for going back to the pub. But if I've missed anything, if you've got a burning question that you want me to answer about the reopening of hospitality in England, or anything else to do with any aspect of changing your drinking, do chuck it in the comments, and it will appear here and I'll weave it into the conversation. I'm not going to name you, so it's it's confidential as you'd like it to be. But do share any comments that you've got, any questions, any concerns about the business of the world opening up, hospitality venues returning, and what to do next. So just a reminder of what the rules are in terms of hospitality reopening in England. Kind of important to say. It's not going to be like going back to the pub was before. And we'll talk a bit about how you can use that to your advantage. But it's going to be table service only. It's going to be outside only. So you may want to take a thick coat. It was hailing and snowing here today. So you may want to dress up warm. The rule of 6 applies, or no more than 2 households. So you're going to want to plan who you go with. You'll need face coverings if you're going indoors to go to the loo or to pay for something, and generally follow the pub's instructions about wearing a mask. Do the right thing, don't be a dick about it. And the really big news is you don't need to order a substantial meal. So no more arguing about whether Scotch eggs constitute a substantial meal or not. You're good to go, and just have a drink. So that's the kind of the basic rules of it. Obviously, follow the instructions of whichever pub or bar or hospitality venue that you go to, but they are going to be working hard to keep you as safe as they possibly can. Before we get into, and as I say, I've got 10 top tips for what to do as you think about going back to the pub after lockdown. But I thought before we get to that, I thought it would be helpful to take a little step back to think about how our drinking behaviour has changed during lockdown. We've been at this for a year now, and so we've been able in Club Soda to observe some things about how people's drinking has changed. And broadly speaking, it would be fair to say that the pandemic has kind of polarized our drinking. We are There are definitely some people who are drinking more, and that's been really, really widely publicised. But equally, there are many people who are drinking less. And that's in large part because of the way in which we drink anyway. Especially if you're somebody who struggles with alcohol, it's really easy to put all of your drinking into one big bucket and imagine that it's all one thing. But the reality is, all of us drink differently in different situations. And there are three broad types of drinking which scientists identify as the types of drinking behaviours which can get us into difficulties. So the first of those is social drinking. Now, social drinking, when we think about social drinking, we often think about pubs and bars. We might even think about social events. But actually, social drinking is a lot about how we connect with other human beings. Social drinking is about relationships and the role that alcohol plays in forming those. So for many people going into the pandemic, particularly, you imagine your average Friday night after work drinker, who, ends up having far too many, kebab on the way home, all a bit messy, big hangover on a Saturday. Basically, people haven't brought that drinking behavior home with them in general. Most social drinkers have actually found it quite easy to cut down during lockdown. And yeah, good evening. So somebody's just commented, carried on from Sober October. Oh yeah, good idea. When seeing friends, decided to bring your own, stock on with up with cans of alcohol-free drinks whenever I see them. This is an excellent plan, and we'll come to some more top tips. But yeah, for those of us whose drinking is largely social, actually lockdown might have been quite an easy time to cut down. Although we'll be worried about the pub reopening because we wonder, is it all just going to come back and be exactly the way that it was before? So that's one type of drinking that has definitely changed. Social drinking generally during lockdown, those of us who find social drinking easy have found it easy to cut down and to stop altogether during lockdown. The second type of drinking that can get us in trouble, though, is what's called emotional drinking. And emotional drinking is a lot about drinking to cope. So whether we're coping with big feelings of stress or anxiety or worry or anger or frustration, or that feeling where you just go, oh god, I need a drink. That's emotional drinking. That's a sign that there's something going on inside you, and you're responding to it by needing alcohol. So that's one part of emotional drinking. The other kind of type of emotional drinking is a lot about accessing happy feelings. It's about wanting to make situations easier and better. So that's the other side of it as well. Unsurprisingly, during lockdown, and during the pandemic generally, we have been dealing as a society with unprecedented levels of stress and anxiety and loneliness and isolation and frustration and uncertainty. And so for those of us whose drinking tends to be more emotional, many of us have found that drinking has escalated during lockdown. So while social drinking, that kind of connective relationship based drinking, even that kind of drinking with your partner, for many people has tailed off during lockdown. Emotional type drinking has really escalated. And that accounts for a lot of why our drinking behavior has kind of split in two directions. And then the third type of drinking that can get us into trouble gets called by the scientists, they call it opportunistic drinking, but really it's kind of routine drinking. It's the drink that you have at 5 o'clock to mark the end of the day. It's the beers that you have when the football's on. It's the bottle of wine that you open on a Sunday when you're having a roast. It's the drinking that's just part of the warp and weft of life that you don't really pay very much attention to. To be honest, you probably put 3 bottles of wine on the shopping list, maybe buy another couple more when you go to the supermarket, and you barely consider what it is that you're doing. And routine drinking is the type of drinking that actually can cause us real difficulties because it creeps up over time. We build up a tolerance and we find ourselves drinking more. So that's kind of a picture of what lockdown has done to our drinking. Social drinking massively declined, emotional drinking massively increased, and routine drinking creeping up bit by bit. And the reason that I say that is because it's really useful when you're thinking about moving on to the next stage of the pandemic, the reopening of hospitality. If you're thinking about what's next, it's really useful to think about your drinking in those terms, to think about which aspects of my drinking are social. When is my drinking about building relationships and maintaining relationships? When is that going on? When is my drinking emotional? When is it about coping with difficult feelings or stress or anxiety? And when is my drinking just routine, that kind of drinking that's just happening automatically? It's really useful to think about those things, because what you'll find is, as the world changes, those different aspects of your drinking are going to come under different types of pressure. Obviously, we're thinking about hospitality venues opening up again, and that's going to put pressure on social drinking. For those of us who find it really easy when we're with friends to have another drink, social drinking is suddenly going to become a thing. But it's not the only type of drinking that's going on. We're still living with uncertainty, so it may be that emotional drinking continues to be an issue for you. It may be that if you're continuing to work at home, that your routine has slipped, that you're drinking earlier in the day. So routine drinking may be an issue for you as well. So it's really useful just to think about all of these different aspects of your drinking and areas where you found it easy or difficult to drink in ways which help you live well, so that then you can make a plan. So that's kind of a little introduction to, some background thinking about how you can think about your drinking. So it's got some social aspects, it's got some emotional aspects, and it's got some routine aspects. And you're probably going to need slightly different plans depending on what kind of makeup of drinker you are. If you don't know, I really recommend that you do our course, How to Change Your Drinking. It's completely free, and it's got a self-assessment at the beginning, so you can understand the extent to which your drinking is social or emotional or routine, and that will really help. So if you do nothing else, go sign up for that free course right now. Costs you nothing at all. Gives you a brilliant introduction to alcohol-free drinks and some introduction to mindfulness as well as giving you that diagnosis of, the extent to which your drinking is social or emotional or routine. So I really encourage you to do that. As I've said, I've got some top tips which I'm going to share with you, but I'd really love to hear your views as well about how you're feeling about pubs reopening, how you're feeling about lockdown lifting generally, whether you've changed your drinking over the last year during lockdown, how that's been for you. If you've got any kind of comments or concerns or problems where you're thinking about hospitality reopening and what that might mean for you, if you're worried that your drinking might get out of hand again, or you're worried that you just might not be able to sustain what's been going on for you, do share your views. But I've got 10 tips for you, just which I'm going to go through. We're going to be publishing these this week, so do catch up on Wednesday. There'll be an article which has got these 10 tips in them, so do come back for that. Make sure you're signed up to our email mailing list. So tip number one is really to consolidate and build on what's happened during lockdown. So That's a really important thing to do, particularly if your drinking's changed over the last year, and particularly if it's changed pretty recently. You're going to want to do some work to think about what's working for you. You know, the business of changing your drinking isn't easy. It takes time. You may not be a finished product. It may not be going perfectly to plan, but you know, one drink less is a win. So if something's been working for you, reflect on what's good, reflect on the situations where your drinking's been going to plan and what you've done in that situation that's made it work. You have played a role in your drinking changing. You know, even if what you reflect is, you know, I was largely as doing social drinking and that's kind of vanished, so my drinking really, it's nothing to do with me. That's not true. You know, you decided you weren't going to go and buy beers on a Friday night. You decided you were going to drink less wine or whatever it was that you did something. So consider what it is that you did, consolidate and build on what's worked for you. That is by far the best way to secure behavior change in the long term anyway, is not to beat yourself up about the stuff that's gone wrong, but really focus on what's gone well. So that's tip number one, is to consolidate and build on what's happened during lockdown. The second point, the second top tip is this, is to open up at your own pace. You know, there is a roadmap, which to be honest isn't a roadmap really, it's a timetable. Anyway, but you know, there's a plan about how the country is going to open up after this winter lockdown. Who knows what the future will hold, but you know, we know what steps we're going to go through. And there are dates in the diary. You know, there's another date coming in May, potentially, when indoor dining and indoor hospitality reopens. And the fact of the government saying that there's a date when something happens doesn't mean that has to be your date when something happens. So I just want to encourage you to take a breath. You know, you can emerge from lockdown at a pace that works for you. You don't have to go to the pub tomorrow, even if somebody invites you. And this is the third point, is to remember that it's okay to say no to an invitation. Now, that can feel like a really big deal right now, especially if you haven't seen people for 6 months, you know, and to be honest, Zoom isn't the same. You know, if you've missed seeing people, it can feel like a really big deal to say no if somebody invites you to go out for a drink. But you know, this is all about controlling situations and making them work for you. If you're not ready to go to the pub, it's okay to say no to the invitation. One thing, a really simple thing that you could do if you're turning down an invitation, is just to say to somebody, do you know what? I'd really like to go out for dinner with you. So could we wait until indoor dining reopens and we can schedule a date for then? You know, you don't have to say no forever. It could just be about delaying, but, you know, go at your own pace. And yes, remember that it's okay to say no to an invitation. There are lots of other ways that you can connect with people. Number four, really simply, is if you've said yes to the invitation, if you're going to the pub for drinks, you are going to need a plan. So you're going to want to reflect back on what your previous social drinking has been like, to understand what your triggers are, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, how easy you find it. You're going to want to make a plan considering where you're going, who you're seeing, what time of day it is, what you're going to drink, and really make a plan that's going to work for you. That's absolutely critical. Nobody is going to get through this unscathed by winging it, right? So if you want to avoid a hangover, if you want to avoid you know, a social event that turns into a disastrous night out, you are going to need a plan. And I suggest you actually write it down. You know, work out what's your ideal, and then what are you going to do to make it work. So that's number four, is make a plan. Number five is consider venues other than the pub. So as you know, a lot of the focus in this, in our national narrative right now in England is about pubs reopening, but it's really important to remember that it's hospitality that's reopening. So cafes are reopening for outdoor service. Restaurants that have gardens will be reopening for outdoor service. There are places that you can meet people socially which aren't the pub. So if just the fact of going to the pub is going to be a big trigger for you, consider venues other than your local. Find out where's open, find out where's doing outdoor service. They are going to be, whether they are a pub or a cafe or a restaurant or a bar or wherever, they are going to be very grateful for your custom right now. So check out what's open in your area. Consider venues other than the pub. That's number 5. Number 6 is to check menus in advance if you can. One of the things that I don't know whether you notice, but I notice when I go to the pub, I've got a group of friends who will regularly find out if there's something alcohol free behind the bar for me. They're used to me now, they know what I like. They'll go and do the asking, but it can actually be a bit disconcerting to go into a pub or a bar and not know what they've got. And it puts you at an immediate disadvantage compared to people who are drinking alcohol. Your mates who are like, I'll have a lager, I'll have a glass of red wine. Have they got a Pinot Grigio? The answer to those questions is going to be probably yes. But if you're going in and you're not drinking alcohol, you can sometimes find yourself going, what have they got? I'll have an alcohol-free beer if they've got one. If not, if they've got an orange juice, that's fine. Otherwise, a Diet Coke's all right. And you end up giving people a list of options because you actually just don't know what's available. So if you can, this is point number 6, check menus in advance. Lots of places publish their menus on their websites. All of the big chains do. Check what they've got behind the bar that's alcohol free before you step in the door. It gives you so much more confidence if somebody asks you what you're having, if you know that the venue's got what you want. If you can't find a menu online, just make sure you're the first one there. You can ask a member of staff, what have you got that's alcohol free? You can work out some options before any of your friends arrive. And then when they do arrive and they do offer you a drink, you can know that if you ask for something, it's going to be behind the bar. And this leads us on to point number 7, which is to remember to say yes if somebody offers you a drink. I used to not give this advice. I used to tell people the best thing that you can do if you are not drinking either for tonight or just for this drink or not at all ever, is to not be involved in rounds. And I've changed my view on that because actually I think, particularly as the world opens up, there's something really important about rounds culture. And if somebody offers you a drink, what they're saying is, it's important to me that you're here and I want to do something nice for you. It's really as simple as that. It's really easy to read into it that they're pressuring you to alcohol. And, I don't know your circle of friends. You probably do have somebody in your circle of friends who's a bit of a dick about the fact that you're not drinking. Everyone has one. You can move on from them. But, lots of people who offer you a drink are doing it because actually they're saying, I'm really pleased to see you and I want to do something nice for you. So say yes. Say, yes, I'd love a drink. And then you're pre-armed with what you want, which is alcohol free. Or, go and offer to help them at the bar. That's the other thing. Oh, no, can't do that. Table service. Ignore that. Bad plan. But, so if somebody offers you a drink, you'll be able to do that in due course. Go to the bar for yourself. But, if somebody does offer you a drink, say yes and ask for something alcohol free. That's a completely legitimate thing to do. Tip number 8 is really just an observation, but kind of useful when you're thinking about rounds culture and thinking about other people's drinking, is just to notice that social drinkers don't like drinking alone. So one of the kind of the dynamics that is going on when somebody offers you a drink is sometimes that they want to drink alcohol and they don't feel entirely comfortable doing it unless somebody else is drinking alcohol. So that's something about, about the dynamics of them and how they think about drinking and socializing. But if you if you don't know what somebody else is like, it might be easiest not to socialize one on one. You could find yourself in a really awkward situation with somebody where they're offering you a drink because they really want to drink, and then you don't want to drink, and then it all gets a bit weird. That effect gets diluted in a larger group. um, so groups might be easier to begin with than one-on-one connections in social settings. um, Tip number 9 is always have 2 alcohol-free drinks first. All of the advice that you've ever had, this is particularly for people who are moderating, but all of the advice you've ever heard about having an alcoholic drink, then a non-alcoholic drink, and alternating basically doesn't work, because you're going to have an alcoholic drink first, and then, as Professor David Nutt says, if you're somebody who likes to drink, it's always easy to have another one. So make sure, give yourself some time and space when you pitch up. If you are going to drink during the evening, make sure you have 2 alcohol-free drinks first. If things do go wrong as well, it's also some protection because you're giving yourself less time drinking over the course of the evening, but it's just an opportunity to arrive and settle in. Also useful in that time, that if your friends are drinking alcohol, by the time they've got to the end of their second drink, they don't care what you're drinking. So it can be a really useful technique just to buy you some time. So that's tip number 9, is to always have 2 alcohol-free drinks first. And then tip number 10, most important, is that remember you can go home whenever you want to. You are under no obligation to stay anywhere for a moment longer than you want to. If you get to a point in the evening where your friends have had 3 beers and they've started repeating themselves and you're getting a bit bored, you can go home. That's an entirely legitimate thing to do. So always remember that. So I'm just going to recap those top 10 tips for you. As I say, I've got an article coming out this week, so if you need a ready reckoner to take with you, make sure you're signed up to our email mailing list so you get news about our articles when they come out. But there's an article coming this Wednesday which has got these top 10 tips in it, and here they are. Tip number 1, consolidate and build on what's happened during lockdown. Number 2, open up at your own pace, not what the government says, what you want to do. Tip number 3, remember that it's okay to say no to an invitation. Tip number 4, make a plan. Tip number 5, consider venues other than pubs. Tip number 6, check menus in advance if you can, or get there first if you can't. Tip number 7, remember that other drinkers want to include you, so say yes to a drink. It's okay to ask for something alcohol-free. Tip number 8 is remember that some social drinkers don't like drinking alone, so it might be easier to go out in a big group rather than one-on-one at first. Tip number 9, always have 2 alcohol-free drinks. And tip 10, remember you can go home whenever you want to. So there you go. That's my top 10 tips for going back to the pub. It's brilliant, exciting moment actually, and I think we should be very grateful and celebratory about where we are. We've been doing a lot of work with the hospitality industry over the last year. If you work in the sector and you're struggling with your drinking, you can actually get our courses completely free. So do check out our website at joinclubsoda.com. Otherwise, whatever the coming month holds for you, Club Soda is here for you. We've got courses to support you. We've got our fantastic community, our Club Soda Together group, and also small groups for our courses. And we also have the guide to the best low no alcohol drinks and where to find them. So whatever's going on for you over the coming month, stay in touch, keep connected, and we will get through the changes that are coming together. Thanks so much for joining me. Thanks so much to the person who said great content. They've got to get back to work now, but we'll come back and rewatch. Another excellent tip. Let's consider this. Tip 11, toilet breaks. Always give me a chance for a timeout, which helps. This is very true. Remember to wear a mask if you go and use the indoors loo. That's it. I'll be back next month on Sunday evening. If you've got any questions that you want me to answer in the meantime, I do have a weekly column called Ask Dru. I'm really happy to answer questions there. Laura's going to be around tomorrow, Monday, for our Monday motivation. She'll look forward to seeing you then. Otherwise, I hope you've had a brilliant weekend. Thanks for spending the time with me, and I'll see you again soon. All right. Cheers.